Hello everyone. In this video we will talk about sensitivity labels and sensitivity info types in the security portal. But before we go ahead and talk about them, let me show you what they are and what they are used for. For example, in here in the security portal I have defined some sensitivity labels called public, confidential and internal only. Under public I have two: personal data and company public data. So these sensitivity labels, they show up in my Office apps. For example, here, if I go under sensitivity, I could see my sensitivity labels: public. Under that, I have personal data, company public data, confidential, internal only. They also show up in my emails. So if I go under public, I see my sub labels, and here is confidential and internal only. So the use case for this is that when a user is creating a document, and at that time they can apply a label to that document. For example, what I have set up in the property is that internal only is the default label. However, user can change the label to any other value. So these labels, they travel with the document, and in these labels you can set up permissions. For example, I have set up permission in this internal only label that if someone gets this document and it's labeled as internal only, then people who are part of my organization, which is anudev.co.in, if they are signed into the app using anudev.co.in user ID, then only they would be able to see the document. Labels also have a order here, so highest being the most restrictive one, or with which we apply to the most confidential document. If a user wants, they can reduce the sensitivity, for example here from internal only to confidential. So I have also set up a setting that if they are decreasing the label uh, confidentiality, then at that time they will have to provide a justification. So this is how a user can apply labels, but we do have setting here in security portal wherein we can specify sensitive info types, and we can apply those labels based on the sensitive info type automatically. So the sensitive info type could be credit card number, US social security number, and there are a lot of them here. We can also define our custom sensitive info types with our keywords. So if those are found in the document, and that time the label is automatically applied. But for this feature we need P2 license, Azure Information Protection P2 license. Let me show you a demo on how to create a sensitive info type. So we will go here and click on create info type, give it a name, custom. Here we will specify the requirement for matching. Here we can specify a keyword, a regular expression, or a dictionary. So we can define a dictionary with the large number of keywords, and we could select that. I'm going to select only keyword here, so I will type in passport. Next, we can define supporting elements. So these are the same: regular expression, keyword, and dictionary. So these supporting elements are searched within 300 characters of the matching element. So for example, you could have a matching element which could be employee ID, which is 9 character long. So you can have a regex here which specifies your employee ID, which could be a 9 character alphanumeric string. And then you can have a supporting element here which could be EMP-ID, EID, employee ID. So if in the document it finds a 9 character string of alphanumeric number which matches your employee numbers, and if it finds EMP-ID, EID or employee ID string within 300 characters of it, in the proximity of that 9 character string, then it will match the requirement. So this confidence level is used in DLP policies. So another point to note here, the sensitive info type which we are defining here, we can use it in sensitivity labels as well as DLP policies. So I'm going to finish it. So my custom sensitive info type has been created, and in the sensitivity labels I already have created 4 labels. So let me show you an example of this confidential one and show you the properties of it. So I have specified display name as confidential, and this is a description for the user. Can be shared with anyone but contains confidential information. This is a description for the admins. Under encryption, I have selected none. So this encryption property, I have only selected in internal only documents. So where I am encrypting the document and setting up permissions who can access it. I have set it up none here, so anyone can access this document. So I'm only marking this document but not applying any permission on it. Content marking, so I will apply confidential as a watermark and also a customized text in the footer called confidential information of the document when the document is labeled by this particular label confidential. As I told you, we can auto label the document. So by this setting, we can detect based on the condition, and that condition could be our sensitive info type which we created. So if I select this here and update my label, then it will look for the instance count of 1 to any. So if it finds one of those keywords in the document, it will mark it automatically as confidential. So it will automatically apply the label. Or we can also select this setting where a user will get a prompt that you should mark this document as confidential because you have one of these keywords in there. And here we can display a message to the user when this label is applied. Apart from sensitive info type, we have another option called trainable classifiers. So these are by Microsoft. So if any of these things are found in the document, so resume, profanity, threat, then automatically it will be marked. So I'm going to say no to it for now. Now I will show you the internal only, wherein I have set up encryption. So if I edit the label, so the name is internal only, and this is for internal documents not to be shared externally. So this is a description for users. Under encryptions, I have selected apply and selected assign permissions now, or I could have selected let user assign the permission when they apply the label. So when I do this, then the users will get an option to set the permissions to whom they can share this document, but I have set it up here as assign permission. Here we can define when the content expires, which has this label. So I have set it to never, or we can specify on a specific date, or we can specify the number of days after label is applied. So the document won't be accessible after that, but I have selected it as never. Allow offline access. So if this document is on a computer where it hasn't connected to internet, then after 7 days it won't be accessible. So here is the permission setting. So I have assigned currently the permission to anudev.onmicrosoft.com. so any user part of my domain will be able to access this document. Otherwise I can select other options here as well, add any authenticated user. So any authenticated user will be able to access the document. So that means if they have an email account and authenticate through Azure AD or a federated social provider, here we can specify particular users or group who would be able to access the document. Here we can add specific email addresses or domains, and then we choose the permission. So co-author permission will give the user these rights on the document. Then we have a co-owner. Co-owner means all the rights, reviewer, viewer, and we can also specify our custom ones. Next, and we can also apply content marking, watermark, and footer, header. And here are the auto labeling settings, so we can also auto label the document. Once we have defined sensitive info types and use them in automatic labeling, which is an optional thing because that requires P2 license, and we have defined our sensitivity labels, which may or may not use sensitive info type to apply automatic labeling, we have to publish these labels to the users. So for that we will click on publish labels. We will select the labels which we want to publish. So I have already published all of these labels, so I can select few of them, or if I want I could select all of them. So a single user can have many policies applied to them with the different labels, and they would see all the labels in the applications. So here I have added already all of them, so let me go through the process once again. Here we will select the users or groups to whom we want to publish. So these are the policy settings. So here we define out of all the labels which one should be applied by default to the document if a user does not select a label. So I selected internal only. User must provide justification to remove a label or lower the classification. So as you saw that when I tried to change the label to confidential, it gave me a box to enter the justification. Require user to apply a label to their email or document. So it forces them to have a label on the document. Provide users with a link to custom help page. So here we can define a custom URL for our wiki document about the labels from which user can get information. Here we specify the name of the policy and we click on next and save it. So I have already have this policy created. So this is the default labeling policy which I created and published to my users. These settings what I have shown you so far apply labels to the documents or emails while user is creating them, but this here auto labeling, it applies sensitivity labels to email messages or OneDrive or SharePoint files that contain sensitive info. So you have your emails, your OneDrive data and SharePoint files already created, and you want to scan them and find if they contain any sensitive data and auto apply labels to them. So you can also do that from here by creating auto labeling policy. You can first run the policy in simulation mode, so we can review like how many documents contain sensitive information before we apply the policy, because once we apply the policy and if we have any permissions applied to it, then that document will become inaccessible. So from here we can do that. For example, we specify a name of the policy which could be anything. We specify which locations we want to scan, so we can do exchange, we can choose users or group, we can select our SharePoint sites, we can select our OneDrive accounts, and for example I could go to exchange, choose users and groups, select my mail user, click on next, select common rules or advanced rules. So common rules have one set of common rules for all the locations. So with advanced we can specify different rules for different locations, and here we will specify a common rule. Select a condition which could be based on the sensitive info type. This we already created. We can also select an existing one which could be, maybe it contains a credit card number. If the document contains custom info type or credit card number, then this will be auto labeled, and then we select which label we want to apply. So I'm going to apply internal only. Next, so we want to run it in simulation mode or leave policy turned off. So I'm going to run it in simulation mode, and next, and create the policy. So once we have the data with us, we can review it and apply it to our exchange mailbox for this particular user. Similarly, we can create it for all the OneDrive, SharePoint sites and all the mailboxes. So far, whatever we have seen in the security portal, the sensitivity labels and sensitivity info type is an extension of Azure Information Protection solution, which has been there from quite long, but now Microsoft is moving towards Microsoft Information Protection in security portal. Azure Information Protection, we have labels which are now called sensitivity labels. Any label we create in Azure Information Protection will appear in security portal, and as it's going to be deprecated in March 31st 2021, so customers would have to move from Azure Information Protection to security portal. Azure Information Protection can discover, classify, protect documents on network shares and on-prem SharePoint sites and libraries as well. It also requires AIP P1 or P2 plan. So the P2 plan is for automatic labeling. So this AIP, Azure Information Protection, makes use of Azure Information Protection Classic Client. We set up these policies from portal.azure.com. The labels are either applied automatically or recommended. Similarly, just we had in sensitivity labels where they can be applied automatically or recommended. One of the differences is that we just saw that we create sensitivity info types. Here in AIP Classic, we used to create information type, but those were label specific. But in sensitivity labels, we created sensitivity info types. We can use them with any label and also in DLP policies. The portal we use to create sensitivity info type or sensitivity labels is security.microsoft.com. It requires AIP Unified Labeling Client to be installed on the device. So sensitivity label can be used to classify SharePoint site, Teams channel, and also Windows 10 using Windows Defender. Some important points about sensitivity info types and sensitivity labeling, which we call MIP labeling now, M365 information protection labeling. So mandatory labeling currently requires AIP Unified Labeling Client to be installed on the device. The client runs only on Windows, so this feature is not yet supported on Mac, iOS, and Android. Automatic labeling requires current channel 2006 plus on Windows and web opt-in. So web opt-in means where you opt in to label your SharePoint and OneDrive files online. So you can enable automatic labeling using web apps. For built-in sensitivity labels, you must use subscription edition of Office. For standalone edition of Office on Windows computer, use AIP Unified Labeling Client. So if you are using subscription edition of Office, then you do not need to install AIP Unified Labeling Client for built-in sensitivity labels. But on a standalone edition of Office, you need to install AIP Unified Labeling Client. Sensitivity labels can encrypt email only or both email and documents. It can protect content in containers such as sites and groups. So when you enable the capability to use sensitivity labels with Teams, 365 groups, and SharePoint sites, the label setting protect content by controlling access to the container where documents are stored and does not result in documents being automatically labeled. So this is an important chart which is available on Microsoft website, which shows capability against minimum Office versions for using built-in labeling. When I say built-in labeling, it means that you do not need AIP Unified Labeling Client. So built-in labeling is there in the Office apps. So with the 1910 plus version of Office 365 apps, you get these features. You get these features in web apps as well if you opt in. So here is that, and also it's showing Android, iOS, and Mac desktop versions. So if you have this or higher version of Office 365 app installed on your machine, then you do not need Unified Labeling Client. Apply a sensitivity label to content automatically that requires 2006 or above. So this is a document. Let me save it as internal only. I have opened the email and sending this internal only document. So even email is marked as internal only and sending it to my different account, which is not part of this domain. So I have received this document and let us try to open it. It is asking me to download the document and then try to open it. So let me download the document and then open it. So now it's not letting me open the document because I'm logged in with a different account. But what if I try to log in with the account which is part of the same domain, which has the permission to open this document? So now I am able to open the document and I could see the content. I could see the watermark as well. and also the footer which I applied. So this was a demo on how to apply sensitivity labels and sensitivity info types in Microsoft Security Portal. And we also saw how to create sensitivity info types, how to automatically apply the labels, how to scan our documents in Exchange, OneDrive, or SharePoint sites to auto apply the labels on them as well. So I hope you like this video. Please like and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in my next video. Bye bye.